we love face-to-face meetings, and certainly what we're seeing is, as you've seen around London, business is very much back to normal in terms of people's attitude towards travel and everything else. So the question for us. Yeah, so I'm Andrew Remington. I'm a corporate partner and the co-chair of the hotels group. Act for a lot of acquirers of hotels, and M&A activity at the moment is extremely busy. And Lewis works in the franchise world and advises on hotel management agreements and franchising. And I know Lewis has been run off his feet as well. So certainly from our perspective, the signs are very encouraging. And I know from an operator perspective, and I know this is meant to be an interactive session, so we welcome Q&A interaction. We will have some panelists. Lewis will introduce our panelists, and thank you again for agreeing to participate. Followed by the panel session, we will have a short break, so you can refresh your teas and coffees and do an email break, and then we'll reconvene with two speakers from within Mishcon to talk about two of the legal issues we're seeing coming up time and time again. I think the two issues that we're seeing at the moment, RevPAR, as we all know, everyone's talking about RevPAR coming back towards pre-pandemic levels, less so in London, more so in the provinces. The pressures that we've seen recently from, shortage of workers. What do we do to fix the shortage of worker problem? The inflation costs of staff costs are a key issue that clients of mine are concerned about. One of our panelists later this afternoon will be talking about immigration issues now, how we've been assisting clients to try and overcome some of those problems. Rising costs, we've all seen the impact of the Ukraine war on energy costs. The impact that's going to have, and how we're going to have to pass that cost on ultimately, and will that impact on our occupancy and RevPAR levels, because there's a certain level beyond which those charges will not be absorbed by the customer. They've got choice. Again, we've got big issues with supply chain, and as a result of the staffing issues, people have resorted to try and use technology far more. To try and mitigate some of the loss of people. And the problem with that is, as I read this morning in this morning's Financial Times, the hospitality sector is now the third largest industry that's been attacked by the hackers because of the volume of data that you have available. And so it is absolutely a hotbed for people trying to integrate that data system and take over your data. And that's why John will be talking about some of the things that he's been working with clients on in the data protection and security area. So as far as we're concerned, this is an opportunity for friends in the industry to get together and to ask questions and to talk about how we address the current market. People say to me, what's your current view? And I always say cautious optimism, because actually the hotel sector, in terms of the occupancy levels, is really quite buoyant and looks to continue to do that, but with a real fight on our hands to manage the costs as we go forward. So that was all I was going to say. I was really going to invite Lewis Cohen, the co-head of the hotels group, to the stage with the panelists, and I'll let Lewis introduce those panelists. But thank you again for coming. Once we've finished, we will be staying in here for cocktails as a thank you for coming. So please stay around. But thank you again. We'll be in touch.
Thanks very much, Andrew. Actually gave a really good preview of the issues that I was going to raise. So I think you've done my job for me, so I might just sit down again and they could just answer the questions that you just posed. Before I start, I think, actually, I'm not going to introduce our panellists. I'm sure they can do a much better job than me. So I will ask each of you, please kindly do introduce yourself. I don't know if you want to start, James? Yes, please.
Hi, I'm James Lawn. I'm the Chief Creative Officer and founder of Mr. and Mrs. Smith, which is nearly 20 years old next year, which is quite extraordinary. We are a travel club. We represent about 1,500 hotels, boutique and luxury hotels around the world, which you can all book through mrandmrssmith.com if you're not doing already. That's it, really. Is that enough for now?
I'm sure. Hopefully we'll hear more.
Hi, everyone. Lovely to be here. Thank you to Mishcons. My name is Naomi Heaton. I'm Chief Executive for founder and co-owner of a new brand which is going to hit the hospitality market this year, The Other House, which is a hybrid between hotels and residential living, which I'll talk to you more about. It's a hotel meets members club. We'll be launching in the summer, and it's a very, very exciting journey for all of us. First property in South Kensington, next one in Covent Garden.
Thanks, Naomi. And Hugh Taylor.
Hi, I'm Hugh Taylor. I'm the Chief Executive of Michelle's & Taylor. I've been in the industry 30 years. Somebody had the audacity last week of calling me a veteran, which I was terribly upset about. We have an investment support business. That's what we do. We look after investors. And we have an advisory business that does a lot of advising work, IBRs, feasibility studies and so on. We do a lot of due diligence, brand selection work. We have an asset management company that oversees assets on behalf of the owners and makes sure that they do a good job in the management team. And we also have a management company. We run about 3,500 bedrooms in the UK under the management business. So a full service investment support business.
Fantastic. So we have a fantastic panel. I'm going to be asking them questions, but I will also give everyone an opportunity to ask questions before the end. So please, if anything strikes you, please, you've got a great panel here, so please don't hesitate. And if I'm running out of time, someone please stop me so that I do give you all an opportunity to ask questions. As Andrew mentioned, it's been an interesting time for the sector. We started with Brexit, which on its own probably would have been enough, and we're still seeing labour shortages and other issues arising from Brexit. We've had COVID. We're still suffering from COVID. Plenty of empty seats today. All three of our speakers were knocked out from COVID, and so we had parachuted two new ones in today, and plenty of people who were meant to be here aren't here. Of course, in the hotel sector, it's just brought it to an absolute standstill, and I think people would have predicted and did predict it would bring it to its knees. It hasn't brought it to its knees. I think that was the big surprise to some extent. But of course, it does and continues to cause problems and challenges and creative solutions. We've seen, as a result of that, probably the loss of business travel. And as we've moved to hybrid models and some people have actually moved to completely remote models, will business travel return, and the impact that has on certain parts of the market cannot be underestimated. And the rise in operating costs as a result of the current war and what else that's going to do perhaps to travel. So that's all a really positive spin on things, I think, so far.
So depressed.
So please all raise a big smile. No, but seriously, but we've also seen, as Andrew mentioned, RevPAR returning in certain parts of the country and predicted to return perhaps to 100% in certain parts of the country, if not already, by the end of the year. Not quite there in London. There is some distress, but it doesn't appear to be a distressed market. We've seen lots of new lenders and real money kind of queuing up to invest in this space in a way that has perhaps shielded it and is protecting it from pain it might have experienced. And lots of new openings. And of course, disruptors like Naomi and new business ideas and real creativity coming through. So the key question I have is kind of, it's not all doom and gloom, is it? What is the state of play from where you're sitting, Hugh?
Wow. Really, I'm trying to pick up on that. Okay, so I've never seen anything like it. In 30 years, I've never seen the market over the last 2.5 years. I don't think anybody has. If anybody this evening, and I'm giving fair warning, tells you what they think is going to happen, they are almost undoubtedly going to be wrong, including me. I can't see what's going to happen next week, let alone next year and the year after. I can give you some forecasts and the analysis that we've done, but it's a hugely unpredictable market that we're in. There is very little transparency out there, and forgive me for picking up from the start, business has not come back to the level that it was in 2019. In fact, the current predictions are that it's not going to come back until 2024. In London, might be a little earlier in the provinces. And that's top line. So let's be absolutely clear. We're talking about a story of two halves. Top half of the P&L and the bottom half of the P&L. And if you look at what the revenue has to do to get the profit lines back to 2019, you're way beyond 2024. That's my prediction. It is better. I can't think of anything that was worse. We run 24 hotels in the management business. We closed the hotels, all of them, twice. I remember when I was at Hilton, I ran 31 hotels at Hilton for a time. And at Hilton, if a hotel had a gas leak, God forbid, or they had to take everybody out of a hotel overnight, so we lost one night, it would go all the way to the board, and we would all work out what to do about the budget for that month. We closed the hotels in 2020 for almost 6 months. And it's absolutely extraordinary how our clients have had to deal with this, and they are still dealing with it today. The fact that banks are not moving in does not reflect the fact that there aren't problems out there. The banks aren't moving in because they are supporting their clients, and more importantly, unlike 2008, where they were hugely exposed to clients who were gearing at 85, 90%, they're now at much more sensible levels and able to support the clients in a way that they couldn't before. That doesn't mean the industry is back to normal by any means. The business travel market has not recovered. You're still looking at 40% of flights lower coming inbound to the UK than it was in 2019, 40%. In 2020, London went from an average in the upper upscale market of 82% to 22%. Last year, it only reached around 50%. In the provinces, it's coming back. And there are markets, of course, which are doing well, much better. And the leisure market and the staycation market has been fantastic last summer and this summer as well. But that's not going to help a large number of hotels that depend on meetings, and I cannot see a solution to meetings yet, or corporate travel, which because of Zoom and Microsoft Teams, it's just so nice to see you all face to face, but most of the meetings we all have on that basis. So the answer to your question, Mr. Cohen, is that the industry is doing better. There is a recovery. It will take about 3 to 4 years from 2019 to get the top line back. I cannot see yet profitability getting back to previous levels for some time, unless, and this is the big if, and that's why I'm so interested to hear what you have to say, we are creative, we are innovative, and we come up with new ideas to look after our customers, because the traditional market is changing structurally, and we have to adapt to that to make sure that we can be as profitable in the future.
Thank you. I definitely want to hold that thought about the disruptors. I'm just keen to see what James, what's your take and what's your perspective?
So my forecast is a little sunnier for my sector, you'll be glad to hear. And I'm very thankful that I'm in the sort of high-end luxury lifestyle leisure market, which has bounced back very well. And we're currently 20% above 2019 for bookings across our portfolio. Of course, there are pockets where it's lower than others, but the domestic market, as Hugh said, is incredibly strong. Best year that we ever had last year, for obvious reasons. And we've been very fortunate. We have a global collection, so we have a domestic market in the US, and we have a domestic market in Australia, and all these other sort of secondary markets for us. So we have had a brutal time. I'm not going to say it hasn't been. It's been incredibly challenging. For us as a company, and also our hotels, we've also had to open and close 2 or 3 times and try to work out what to do with 1,000 turkeys when the government sort of closed it all down. Not last Christmas, the one before, if you remember, about 2 days before. It was a nightmare. So there has been challenges, but we are definitely seeing a pent-up demand for obvious reasons. People have got a lot of money who were lucky enough to save and keep their money during lockdown. And we're seeing bigger spends, we're seeing average length of stay going up. All these things, obviously subject to anything terrible happening with World War III, which hopefully won't go any further. So, you know, that is obviously a worry for everyone, and there was a bit of a shudder when that started. But even that now, I think we're feeling incredibly sad for the people of Ukraine, of course, but hopeful that it won't sort of go further and it won't affect the industry again. But none of us know this at the moment. So I think, you know, cautiously optimistic is where we're at. Hotels, thankfully, the ones I represent tend to be not reliant on business travel at all, which I don't see coming back at all in the way that it ever was, ever. I mean, I think optimistically people are saying 25% might go. I would argue possibly half of it might go. I don't think it will, personally. And I think those hotels have got a real challenge on their hands to reinvent themselves. And what's that going to look like? Maybe nobody's going to buy them all and change them into residential properties.
That'd be good.
But I think, you know, the business hotel as we knew it is over. I think that trend was starting to accelerate a bit anyway. And from a sustainable perspective, it's not a bad thing that we're not all jumping on planes and doing snack travel anyway. We want to protect the world if anything's left, hopefully. And also, financially, it makes much more sense to do Zoom calls when appropriate. But of course, it's also, as you say, lovely to see people in person. So we need to get the mix right. I think in terms of leisure, particularly the high end, it's going to be fine. It tends to, attract the best talent because people want to work there. It pays better because they can charge more, all those sort of lovely things that they can get from it. And they're much smaller things to fill. So, for me, I'm very fortunate, but I completely recognise it's going to take a bit longer for the rest of the industry to sort of catch up with where we are.
So I guess fortunate to be in the place that you occupy in the market.
Very fortunate, yeah.
I want his job.
So Naomi, you're in a completely different position because actually you're not open yet. So you're dealing with building and developers and a different part of the journey, but a journey that actually lots of other owners and developers are also experiencing. What kind of things have you seen, and how's it impacting on you?
Well, you're right. At this point, we're developing. We're owners, developers, and operators. And what I didn't mention was this is a joint venture in conjunction with APG, which is one of the world's largest pension funds. So our aspirations and ambitions are large. We have the two assets we have are very large, and we're looking to get 3 or 4 more in prime central London before we roll out internationally. But at this particular stage, one element of the business is actually developing the asset. We bought South Kensington in December 2019, and it's a 237 suite club flat asset, as we call it, and it's a very, very big job. And of course, we started literally just before COVID. So from a construction point of view, we suffered labour shortages. We've obviously had Brexit, we've had supply issues, we've had cost issues. Cost inflation has gone up massively, probably 15 to 20%. Our electricity bill went literally overnight up 100%. But then it's where do you get your people? A lot of the people during COVID went back home and have not come back. Clearly, we've had a few people going back to Ukraine. I'd say that's a very small proportion of it. But we've also had enormous labour shortages due to Brexit. So lack of labour, lack of supplies not arriving when they should, all the things that have been ordered by the contractors, and then every week it's coming next week, it's not coming next week. And it's just continuous. So costs, supplies, ordering, COVID, all of these things have amalgamated together to make managing a large construction project really, really difficult. And whilst I crack the whip over our contractors, and I have to say, I just came straight from there to here. There are issues. There are issues that are very, very difficult to contend with, and where we have to be very nimble and find other solutions. Having said that, we always intended to launch in the summer, and all things being equal, we will. So we've actually managed extremely well in very difficult circumstances. I mean, going forward then to talk about how do hotels need to adapt? How do we need to adapt the new era? We started thinking about the concept of the other house, as I said, 10 years ago, where we wanted to create the sense of place and sense of home for the long stay guests have, with the access to service that short stay guests have, and to create a real sense of experience and a sense of feeling like a local. That's why we wanted to call it the other house, because it's got to feel like your other house as long as you're in town. And in a way, we hit the COVID impact quite well, I feel, because I think that there is going to be slower travel, as James rightly said, less flights, with corporates will send their people over for longer periods of time, probably less frequently, but for longer. The Pierre de Terre buyer, the people who've all moved out and now need to come back in, they need somewhere to go. And the transient stayer wants more sense of experience and being part of the local, rather than just being completely service responsive or service driven. So I think the whole idea of slow travel in terms of experience. And of course, what you were so rightly saying, sustainability is so important. And I think for all hotel assets, sustainability is going to become more and more relevant. We are targeting BREEAM Excellent on all our assets, which is difficult when they are refurbs. We are wholly electric. We have green roofs, blue roofs, no single waste products. Everything we're doing is to become as sustainable as possible. And I feel that our guests will want that they have a set of values, and that is part of their kind of ethical code, is how they believe in sustainability. So sustainability, and the other element that we're really working on, which I'm sure we'll talk about later, is tech, enabling people to have tech solutions to their whole experience, if that's how they want to do it. So that actually the interactions with our staff or our team can be higher quality because we can do an awful lot of mundane things on tech. So all these different strands which are coming to the fore now seem to have come together as we are launching the other house.
It's very interesting, and there's lots of different facets there, to be honest with what you've said, that I'd like us to perhaps unpick while we're talking about. Certainly sustainability is an issue. I think the built environment is responsible for 40% of all carbon emissions, and hotels are a big contributor to that. Don't think the regulatory, and I'm not an expert on that, but I don't think the regulatory requirements have necessarily bite on all owners at the moment, but it'd be interesting to see. Well, I might as well ask the question now. To what extent you think this is going to, I mean, I think from a consumer perspective, it's hugely important, and obviously you've put a lot of store by it. To what extent do you think this is going to play out in the marketplace over the next few years? Because the regulation's not quite biting, I don't think, on hotels, but consumer pressure may change that. Are you seeing anything?
Yeah, I mean, I'm definitely seeing that. I mean, we're trying to become a B Corp certified company at the moment. And part of that mission is to, we see ourselves as the company to put, if you like, the sustainability efforts of our hotels in front of our customers so they can make an informed choice of where they should stay and spend their hard-earned money. Obviously, we don't own the assets like you guys, but we can definitely tell your story, so to speak, and give people that sort of visibility. So we see that very much as part of our role. And then we're supporting the Blue Marine Foundation and the World Land Trust, so we've taken the sort of land and sea sort of tactic, because we figure that's pretty important to travel. And we'd like to help save both of those. So it's all about protection for us, what we have. And so we're supporting that in many different ways, from trying to make people buy digital vouchers and memberships rather than the physical ones, through to just about to allow our customers to start to offset their carbon through donations to these brilliant charities. So we're really starting to pick up the pace on all of that side of things. But really, my main job is to partly spread the incredible work that some of these hotels do. I mean, some of the innovation that some of these hotels are doing to tell other hoteliers so that they get that visibility, so that they can step up their sustainability efforts. So we see ourselves as a broadcaster of that. And also, as I said, to really try and up the whole game for the whole of the hotel sector, I think, is where we can play our part in the sustainability role.
Thank you, because it's not just a consumer issue. I guess it's lenders, investors
Exactly.
are increasingly, it's high up on their agenda.
Yeah.
I don't know, Hugh, is that something that you're seeing, and to what extent can, you can't change a hotel overnight to react to these things. And bearing in mind the start of this conversation and the position and rising costs, it couldn't be the worst time to almost be saying to businesses, oh, and you've got to put sustainability and redo your whole hotel. I mean, that is a pretty big ask, I'd say.
Forgive me for being sceptical.
Yeah.
The hotel industry hasn't done itself a lot of favours when you see the cards in the bathrooms that still say, if you want your towels washed, then put them in the bath, for sustainability reasons, when everybody knows it's about laundry costs. And when you look at the opportunities that hotels have to put sustainability on the map, you have companies like Scandic that's worth 20 years ahead of everyone else coming out of Scandinavia in positioning it as a green business. But I don't recall, and I talked to the banks, the only clients I have are investors. I can't remember a conversation I've had about sustainability as an issue that has been involving the acquisition, the business planning, or the positioning. And as a marketeer for the first half of my career, I would argue that in order to make it work, because it is such an important area of our lives, particularly in this generation today, and the generation that is now staying and caring a lot about it, there's a marketing job to be done here. And I don't think it's just about putting it into your business, but the marketing team have to get across what you're doing, that it is relevant and it is helpful to the customers, because I don't hear about it enough.
I think it's interesting that you say you haven't heard anyone talk about it, because literally I was talking about it a couple of days ago with APG and also with the valuers for the two assets. And whilst at the moment valuations, we're not seeing a premium for being sustainable in our valuations, what I think that we will begin to see is that there will be an additional risk factor applied by the valuers to valuations if properties aren't properly sustainable. So I think it is going to have an impact, and I think it will have an impact amongst lenders and also amongst blue chip investors. So I think that is worth mentioning. I also think that there are lots of things that one can do which will engage the consumer or the guest of a hospitality asset. So, for example, with our app, they can actually measure how much energy we're consuming in our residence clubs and see what we would expect as an appropriate level of energy to consume. Every single product that we're putting into our residence clubs, we're looking at, right down to the coffee capsules. And it's not just a question of whether they're recyclable, but actually how long it takes for them, for example, to decompose. We're looking absolutely at the root of every single thing that we're putting in to our residence club to check its genuine sustainability. We do not want to be greenwashing. We do not want to have something that superficially appears to be sustainable, but actually it's going to take 50 years to decompost. So I really think that there are so many opportunities where you can do it in a genuine way, and we all have conversations all the time going more and more back to that provenance of that product to see whether or not it's going to meet our criteria. And I think that is going to become really important. And probably, as you say, potentially initially more important for the consumer than for the investor or the bank, but I think it'll get there.
I'm delighted to hear that, and you should be congratulated in all that you're doing in this area. My comment was that I don't see it widespread in the industry, and I don't see it properly understood by the customer. Or
the consumers will drive the change.
Correct.
And I think you're setting yourself up absolutely correctly, because our consumers are starting to comment about plastic bottles or straws or anything, tiny things going, I thought that was a bit off in your hotel, thought we let you know. We're actually starting to feed back some of this information.
That's how it starts.
And all those, plastic straws isn't going to save the world. There's a hell of a lot of other stuff that we can do and we can start to highlight. And again, some of the innovation that we've seen, there's this one incredible hotel called Saniva Fushi in the Maldives, where they have actually a recycling area on the island, which they take guests around on a tour to try and inspire them for how they recycle, and it is extraordinary. So to give you a couple of ideas, all the fish that arrives in polystyrene, that polystyrene is used as insulation with the new villas that they may build on the island. All the bottles, wine bottles, etc., is chipped down to small glass beads, which they use in the cement mixes that build the foundations for the villas that they build. All the charcoal that lights all the barbecues is all made, in their own charcoal making, where they coppice all the trees and what have you. Even the egg cartons that arrive, they light the island with candle lights, and at the end, all the little dregs of all the candles are put into a cauldron, which is then melted down and then poured into the empty egg cartons. A small wick is put in, and they use those as firelighters to light the charcoal that lights the barbecue. Literally every single thing is thought through. And the last bit, just to show the sort of innovation that we're seeing, which is, it's small, but it's interesting. They've actually started a glass blowing factory, or not factory, studio, I should say there, where they are, again, using bottles and stuff, where they're making amazing pieces of art from the glass, which guests are then buying and taking it off the island and using it as objets d'art when they get home. So they're making money out of the waste. This is in the Maldives.
In the Maldives.
Yeah, and it's extraordinary, the stuff that they're thinking through and what they're doing and how creative they're being. And they're sharing this with other Maldivian islands so that they can do the same thing. And it's just really, really lovely to see. And
but I guess the key will be, is these trailblazers, is getting their stories out.
Getting their stories
and
out.
it's as you say, say, as people become aware of how you develop your business and how you prioritize sustainability, consumers will report. People use social media, and that kind of leads me on a little back rather to, we talked about what's the state of play, and Naomi, you've given the examples of actually how you're using tech in your business, and maybe that's one of the solutions to the shortage of employment is actually if you build tech, we don't need quite so many staff, and maybe we can deal with the shortages because we've got tech solutions. But I guess the question that I think people really want to hear is actually, given the state of play, given what you say, Hugh, about actually we're not going to recover that bottom line for years and years and years, and we've got people here, investing in hotels, looking to, you hear of hotels going on the market, and there being lots of people buying. So clearly, people still see this is a long-term good investment. What should businesses A, be looking for, and B, changing now? What needs to change to make a difference?
I think that it's an interesting point, because when you look at the P&L, everyone is buying off 2019 numbers still. Okay, so when we're on 9 processes at the moment in our business, and in each one we're doing the 5-year pro forma, and the 5-year pro forma refers back to 2019. Kind of ignore 2021 as if they didn't happen, right? But you're building up the growth to reflect that. The truth is that the business P&L is completely different. It just looks different, and people forget that. The 2019 value, which is what everyone's looking at the moment, it is not actually reality. And you have to run the numbers properly to be able to understand where that enhanced cost saving is going to be. In every recession, and this is my 4th, I suppose, 3rd or 4th, when you look at a recession, the industry generally re-educates itself. So you take a line in the sand and say, hang on a minute, I might be able to run that with a few less heads. And I might be able to do this in a different way, because out of necessity, I have to do it. In fact, I would argue that and forgive me, I am a skeptic, the sensibility around sustainability and the environment and so on was more to do with cost-cutting necessity during recessions, when people said, look, what efficiencies can I get so I don't have to use as much energy? It's often that trigger that allows people to think sensibly about it. It's not about saving the planet as it should be. It's about saying, I'm in a recession, how do I save money in this area? Actually, I can do it this way. And I'm seeing that today in all sorts of areas. The hotel businesses that we are involved in, and we run 40 to 50 advisory projects a year. We asset manage about 5,000 bedrooms, and we have a management company with about 3,500. And in all these businesses, the hotels are being asked, what do you have to do to structure your business so that the P&L is going to look differently, but that profit line at the bottom is going to grow and is genuinely going to be closer to 2019 quicker. And you have to think with a blue sky attitude. You cannot look at it and say business is normal. And that's some of the things I think we're saying today. And that does involve, what does my payroll look like? How can I manage the payroll, not in just what they're doing, but whether we can have job sharing, whether we can have a different way of managing their time and their efforts, and who does what, and how senior should people be, what mix of these staffing levels should we be having by market, and so on and so forth. In the same way, on the cost side, you can't do anything about the raw utility charges. You can do absolutely a load of stuff on efficiency and on technology that will allow people to save money. So all these environmentally friendly initiatives, all these commercial issues, it does, in my view, come down to the P&L. And how you review it.
Well, I mean, I think, obviously, on sustainability, some of it is cost saving. We use glass bottles in our club flats, which we will add water to every day. We have refillable bottles in our bathrooms. Except that you take that's easy, but actually the thing that doesn't degrade normally is the black plastic bit at the top. So we've had to deal with that too. So of course there are cost savings, but generally building a property greener costs you significantly more to build a property which is properly...
As an initial investment.
As an initial investment. Okay. So operationally, yes, but build-wise, no.
Of course.
And I think tech is really important. Now, when we started the other house and the residence club and the whole concept of flexible living, we said we are not a hotel. We are a completely new mix of the resi and the hotel prospect, and we are going to look at it differently. We've always said we will look at it differently. So one is most hotels waste an awful lot of space. The lobby areas are too large. The restaurants are probably far too sophisticated when everybody can go out. In central London, I'm talking about, the kitchens are too large. So first of all is, how do you optimize space to make it a more efficient operation? And the way we optimize space is far, far smarter than most hotels. And with our club flats, because we have a distinct living and sleeping, a living area and kitchen area from sleeping area, how do you optimize that? And coming from the private rented sector, we had that skill. And the other thing is, for example, in our club flats, which is completely different from most hotels, you go into your living area before you go into your sleeping area. Whereas in nearly every hotel, you pass your bed and then you may have a desk or a sofa. But if you were living in your own environment, you would never live like that. So space optimization is really important, but also tech is really important. And we'd always wanted to reduce the mundane human interactions by using tech and people be able to message. And that's happening more and more, those kind of messaging systems where you can talk to the team. And tech, therefore, means that you can have better quality interactions and the mundane goes. Our back of house system, when I got into developing this concept and getting into hospitality, I couldn't understand why there were so many different systems back of house. I couldn't understand why it wasn't all one big system. I realized that there is no one big system, and we have 39 different systems back of house, and we've done API integrations into each one of them. So hopefully we will have a single source of truth in the PMS, and everything filters through to our financial system without having people in the middle, and that helps save labour. And also the other concept was we wanted people to multitask, so we don't split the front of house, our house jacks as we call them, the F&B people, even the housekeeping team, that they are going to be able to multitask. And if we're really busy front of house, the F&B people can help. But in the quiet times, they can go to help behind the bar or in the cafe or whatever it is, so that you actually use manpower better. And also, if you can give people more prospect of promotion, more prospect of being able to learn different trades within the hospitality business, you also get more motivated people. And so if we can develop our team culture better and stronger and do it better, then we're going to get more productivity from the people that work with us. So I think there are a number of ways in which you can help save costs in terms of staff and labour, and in terms of being sustainable. But you really have to think about it hard, and it is a cultural shift, which I think is exactly what you were saying, that the hospitality business needs to think about things differently and not just do things the way it always has been done. And there have been lots of shocks, which does start people thinking about how to do it differently. But it is about time that it is done differently, because everyone's been treading their own paths for a very, very long time. And now we need to understand that lifestyle, experience, the idea of having a members club, which we have attached to our residence club, these are all things that people want and value, and we need to be looking at it from a consumer perspective rather than from just a kind of business perspective.
Yeah, I think also we haven't been paying people well in hospitality.
Right.
I mean, you can get the same money being a very experienced barman as you can being on a checkout of a supermarket, and I'm not demeaning that by any means, but the person working the bar is going to work maybe on Christmas Day. You know, it's a totally different job, and we're not paying these people enough money. So I presume, you guys, the experts in this, a lot of the money will have to go to the consumer as well, who are going to have to pay more money, just as we're used to paying a lot more money for our food in restaurants that we see now and all these things. You know, it is going to get more expensive. And then that becomes a quality issue and the value issue, and those are the challenges I see for hotels going forward. You know, if you're going to charge X, you know, what am I going to get? And whether that's £150 a night or £1,000 a night, I definitely will be looking at value.
I think working smarter is clearly, and structuring smarter is a good idea. But I do think that one of the reasons perhaps that we've lost the teams that we had pre-COVID and they didn't come back, is because they went and experienced other roles in
Yeah.
other industries and decided, you know what, why am I working on Christmas Day?
More flexibility, exactly. Yeah.
100%.
Better pay and more
it's a
flexibility.
very, very
Yeah.
tough industry to work in.
Yeah, which is
and
why it
they've
needs to become
discovered
more vocational like it is abroad, and it's not here. It's seen as a stopgap so often. And
Exactly.
we need to reinvent the way
Yeah,
hotels
yeah.
are seen in terms of staffing them, and
I mean-
that's a marketing job as much as sustainability
I
is.
think you're absolutely right. And people went home to wherever their families were during COVID and thought, well, actually,
Why am I going back?
why am I coming back?
Yeah,
I think
yeah.
it is
Yeah.
it's a
Yes.
big ask.
Thank you. The final thing I just want to actually raise is because you mentioned consumers, and obviously consumers are the heart of all of this. And we've lost the business travel to some extent. It probably may come back, but maybe 25%. I'm interested to hear whether when you set up the other place, it was with a view to capturing some of the business market, and whether you've had to pivot, but also, and particularly one eye on the fact that we're going to talk about data, but customer experience. People are on social media. They immediately will review something. They will say, as you said, I had plastic straws in my room. I had the card. This was my experience. Their expectations of service, whether it's £100 a night or £400 a night, has changed. People expect to actually receive value for money, and they expect you to communicate with them in a different way. And that might not be through humans. That might be through messaging. That might be through contact, making things seamless and digital rather than through people, which actually sometimes are barriers because they just take so long to do stuff. And actually, you had a back of hotel where things were transported on paper, and they haven't got 37 systems all with APIs. So I guess the question is what are you seeing? Are you seeing people stalking guests on social media, finding out what they're into and surprising them? Are you seeing them making notes and passing, in the big hotel groups, are they saying, well, Lewis stayed here and he wanted in his minibar this beer, so when he stays in LA, we're going to have that beer, and when he didn't, he wanted a bath. Am I going to have to ask for that every single time and then not get it? Or am I going to actually have a better experience?
How big a spender you are, Lewis, I think.
Oh, well, then I'm screwed.
My
My wife will be looked after very well.
We never have enough alcohol stocked in the hotel when you arrive, so it's a challenge.
You know me so well.
Do you want to answer that, or shall I have a kick-off?
Go on, you go for it,
So,
yeah.
So there are things that are different, and you need to make sure that the customers are looked after. And ultimately, I go back to this commercial aspect, it is all about finding ways to attract them and communicate. And CRM, which was, I think I studied it in '89 when I was still at university. Look at the loyalty clubs today, the loyalty schemes, millions and millions. I think Marriott's got the largest one now with Bonvoy, Hilton's extraordinary, IHG's one is spectacular. These are fantastic clubs. I'm telling you now, and I was the vice president of marketing at Hilton, they are not using them for CRM in the way that you would expect. They probably do have the information that says that Lewis Cohen is an alcoholic. But, and this is the important bit, they were not acting on it to put enough beer in his
It's whiskey
in his
anyway.
bedroom.
I blocked them.
But seriously, they know a lot about you, but they're not using it in the way that they might. And if you check into a hotel, they say welcome back if you're an honours member. That's what they do. That's understood. But are they giving you the right bedroom? The best example I can give you is the Chiltern Firehouse, which we asset manage. We oversee Andre Balash, who is an extraordinary hotelier. They have 26 bedrooms, so they can do it. It's easier. And I think they have, I'm not going to give too much away on the payroll, but they have a lot of people looking after you, put it that way. But they will know, this is the extreme, they will know when you arrive, maybe probably well before, exactly how to look after you, exactly what you want. And they will make sure that you do not think about your stay. They've got it all sorted for you. Now, it's an extreme because you're paying a huge amount of money for the accommodation, and you've got the ability with a small number of people to look after them very well. And they are people like Leonardo DiCaprio, so clearly you want to look after them. But in a general branded hotel, which is the game I'm pretty much in, which is sort of 100, 200, 300 bedrooms units, these brands have huge customer databases, and they simply are not using it.
It's pretty
in the way.
antiquated still, I would
It's
say,
so
generally.
antiquated.
I think, yeah, I mean, we see that, and also there's so many sources of booking. So if you're coming through me, or you're going through Booking.com, or Expedia, or whatever it might be, and depending on the size of the hotel, obviously Chiltern and those sorts of size of hotels are exceptional, and they get to their guests before they arrive in a way that other bigger hotels just can't.
Yeah.
But it's pretty shocking, the systems, I would say, from a booking perspective and from an information passing on perspective. Also, GDPR has blocked some of this as well, of what you can
That's
and
true.
can't do, which
That's
has
true.
been the biggest nonsense since Brexit. So, you know, that's that. I remember all that and what we were all going through. I seem to be getting more spam than ever, so I don't know what happened there. But yeah, I think, you know, there's a long way to go before the dots are being joined, and it's great that your technology, when your customers arrive, are going to be looked after the way they are. But
certainly everything that we're doing is to ensure, for example, we know exactly where the bookings come from, and that we can consolidate all that information in one place. But equally, our guests are probably a little bit more independent. They know what they want. They don't necessarily want to be kind of smothered with attention when they arrive. They may well, you know, they'll be able to check in on their phones. They'll be able to use their phones to open their doors, do their room controls, check how busy the gym is, and so forth. So not everyone wants that kind of cosseted attention, and to some extent, I think the new kind of luxury, the new lifestyle, is not that kind of completely pampered approach. It's being able to have attention when you want it and be independent when you want it. But certainly everything that we're doing is to be able to collect that data and utilize that data in the most efficient, powerful kind of way. Because I'm sure we're going to hear a talk in a moment, but of course we all know that data is power and data is all, and also getting it right for your guests.
That's a great point. How many of us want to go into a 5-star restaurant and continually be interrupted whilst we're talking to say, have you got enough? Can I refill your water? And then announce the food to me, so I have to stop having my conversation because they want to boast how wonderful their chef is.
I went into a hotel just a couple of days ago, and there's a beautifully besuited doorman. Now, how are you? Are you having a nice day? I go in, and then I have to say, yes, thank you, it's lovely of you, and then on the way out. And actually, a lot of people don't want those kinds of interactions.
Intrusive.
They want to have the interactions when they choose to, and not when it's...
It's very difficult to get right, because technology can also really annoy you. I mean, you know,
it can.
the amount of controls that
work.
open curtains and turn taps on, and God knows what, takes me an hour to work out, to
Exactly.
run my room. You know, there's all sorts of things, good and bad, from both sides. I think.
But you then, therefore, need an analog alternative. But also, tech has to make it easier, not more difficult.
No,
otherwise,
I agree.
it's failed.
No, I agree, but I'm really enjoying sort of writing hot and cold on taps and things like that again. You know, I like switches which I can move myself rather than trying to work.
I don't get that much attention from my wife.
So I do think some things have been over-teched as well. So it's all about that effortless experience.
Exactly.
When you feel like it's right, then you know.
Not when you feel it's forced upon you.
It's the swan we're after. You know, I know everyone's going crazy, but I just want it to feel like, everything's going just perfectly. And that's hard. That's tough to do.
But I would also say we are paperless.
Yeah, that's great.
We have no paper.
Great.
We don't have any paper invoices, even. You can't even sign a bit of paper.
Love it. You're definitely moving in the right way, for sure.
Absolutely.
Without a doubt.
I'd love to, if anyone has any questions from the audience, Steve's got a mic. Please just raise your hand if there are any questions at all.
Hi, Amran Raja here from Phoenix Capital Partners. We're just about to launch an operator-agnostic green hotel fund, and it's amazing to hear the panel and their insights.
Wish I hadn't said what I said earlier.
Your placement is waiting in the wings. One of the things that we're really, really focused on is energy and efficiency, not only because of the climate crisis, but also the rising cost of energy. And so one of the biggest operational costs in terms of the OPEX is the cost of utilities. And so one of the things that's really interesting in touching upon is sustainability from a design perspective and understanding how we can get that right, because ultimately there's a balance between the capex, what you spend in terms of your build, and then the OPEX saving. When does it kick in? When have I got the return on my investment, in essence? And I think with the current energy crisis, what I think buildings need to be designed in a much more interactive, manner, not necessarily design driven. I don't mean it negatively if I'm sat next to any architects. In particular, but also from an engineering perspective, is understanding that if we can make the buildings function more efficiently, I think that's really, really important. But I think one of the things is quite apparent is the hotel industry is also struggling because there are 2-star and 3-star assets that have been underinvested in terms of the bricks and mortar. So how can you make the topics that I've discussed there great if you've got an expendable cash sum and you can afford that standard and lifestyle? What are the lessons learned in terms of 2-star and 3-star hotels, and how can they benefit? Because there are lots of people on a diminished income with rising taxes and the like, and how can we sort of cater for that end of the market? That's quite a long, there's no simple answer to that, by the way.
How do we make that end of the market greener, so to speak?
Absolutely.
Yeah. It's going to be a tough gig. It's going to be really difficult. I mean, I think there has to be some investment, I would say, to be able to try and become greener as a hotel. And I think everything that Naomi said in the way that she's built hers may be difficult, but there is lots of things, and I'm not an expert in this by any means, but I'm reading a lot about what other hotels are doing. And so I think they probably will have to seek investment to try and change the way their energy, whether that's solar, whether that's boreholes for heating pools or whatever it might be. I think they're going to have to make some investment, because I do think, and I really believe this, that whether you are a 3-star or a 5-star hotel, I think customers are going to become more and more demanding of this. They really are. And I don't know about you guys, but I don't like feeling like I'm being wasteful. If I go to a hotel and I see, too many soaps and I'm packing them all, and then I don't feel that they're recycling my rubbish, and why haven't they got different bins for this? I feel like I'm in a luxury place that isn't caring about it. And so I do think that drive is happening, and I don't see whether you're in £100 or a £1,000 hotel, that drive from someone should be the same, I would say. So for me, it is about being plastic free. It's also about how you deal with your team and how you pay your staff and all these things. Sustainability covers much more. It's how you interact with your local community. So many of our hotels are the hub of their local community. They are supporting local schools. There's so much good we can do under the sustainability bracket beyond energy, let's just say. And I think hotels need to look at all aspects of sustainability. And like I said, I just gave you a very top line inspiration of one hotel doing extraordinary things. People need to get into this as a topic and really think about what they can do in their sort of lane, so to speak.
I don't know if it suits the budget and limited service market better perhaps than many others. The model is based on a low operating cost and very high conversion. So your GOP percentages are in the 60s and so on, because you are effectively taking out all the other costs in there. The investment up front actually isn't as relevant if you can get the return through efficiencies. So I would argue that the travel lodges of this world and the Premier Inns and the Hamptons and so on that are in that space, the Ibises, have the ability to come up with models which may be a little more expensive for investors to put in, but against the operating costs that actually dictate the value, you're going to be getting an exit, a significantly better EBITDA to put a multiple against, because of the investments you're making on the sustainability side up front. So I think that market actually is entirely probably the best placed to benefit from your investment. So, I wish you every success with it, because I do think that is hugely valuable. Let's do that. Absolutely.
I'd love to thank you all for a fascinating conversation. I mean, my head is brimming with information and knowledge, and I'm grateful to all of you for taking time out of your day and to share your opinions so fully and frankly with all of us. So thank you very much.
Just want to say thank you again to the panelists. Sitting there listening to the conversations that spark between everyone, it just has so many thoughts that go through my mind in terms of questions that have come up on investor committees that I sit on and OPCO issues. There were two things that came up. I was in San Francisco 2 weeks ago and talking about the use of data. And there's a whole industry that's being created with CDPs, client data platforms, where they go in and do deals with the people who've got this host of data, that where they have consent because they've got the data consent by this, and they're actually manipulating that data and making it useful for the client in a way that they don't know how to do themselves. So my prediction is that if we're trying to be smarter, there are a whole avenue of tech companies now being created and developed deliberately to take advantage of that data set that's just been forgotten. in terms of that available data. And the second part that really that resonated was, the ability to be smarter about the use of space. Many hoteliers don't think of themselves as a retail space. They don't think of themselves as what's my profit for square foot. They don't think of a space as being, can I take advantage of that and turn it into a WeWork or alternate space for people to come and work when they're only coming into town 3 days a week. They're not creating it as a destination. They're thinking of it only as room key. And I think that to me is something that I see the market listening to and thinking about very heavily in terms of trying to be current and present. So the second half of our session today is two short discussions dealing with two of the issues that I think we've heard on the panel today. The first is relating to the huge shortage of people in the industry. There's reportedly the industry surveys said that 180,000 spaces that are currently unfilled in this sector. And the question is, how do we fix that? Yes, there's only so much we can do in terms of technology to replace that personnel shortage. But the other thing is to look at, well, are there opportunities to assist clients in terms of helping with their immigration, and there are options available. So I wanted to introduce Natalie Loader, who's come forward at short notice because our original speaker, unfortunately, is unable to attend. She's part of our immigration practice and is here today to just explain some of the things that we're advising clients and helping them with to try and fill that staff shortage gap. So Natalie, if I may.
Thank you. I don't think I'm going to be able to provide that solution, unfortunately. We're good, but we're not that good. So I've been asked to talk to you about the challenges that immigration poses for the hotel industry. And obviously what we've heard today is that there is a huge staff shortage, and that's due to Brexit and also compounded by the COVID pandemic. But I think we need to rewind a little bit as well, because one of the biggest challenges we have in UK immigration is the government's UK immigration policy, which is called the hostile immigration environment. So against that backdrop, any reform to the UK immigration system is an uphill struggle. So for years, we've been really lucky. As part of Europe, we were able to rely on the free movement of people. And that means for years, UK businesses have been able to draw from a large pool of flexible labour to staff their industries. Unfortunately, prior to Brexit, EU nationals were able to come to the UK. They didn't have to get any documentation. They just needed their passport. And then they were here and they could live and work and study and do what they like in the UK just on the basis of being an EU national. Post-Brexit, it's a completely different environment. EU nationals now need a visa to come to the UK in the same way that any other non-British national or non-Irish national would require. So that means if they're going to come to the UK, they need a purpose to come to the UK. And the purpose, if it's work, they need a work permit to come to the UK. And this is not that easily attained. As an aside, for any EU nationals who were in the UK prior to Brexit, they were able to protect their status in the UK by applying for either settled status or pre-settled status under something called the EU settlement scheme. And I think the government's hope with that was that they would be able to still have a pool of EU workers who were able to stay in the UK, and there wouldn't be a rapid loss of labour as a result of Brexit. But post-Brexit, anyone coming to live and work in the UK now from the EU needs a visa to do so. So suddenly employers are in a completely different environment. They've gone from having to do nothing in terms of immigration to having to do something. And often that having to do something has significant hurdles in terms of the skill level of the role, the minimum salary of the role, and actually just the cost of entering the immigration system itself. So the current scheme, or prior to Brexit, the scheme for work permits is called the sponsorship system. And employers have to apply for a licence. Once they get the licence, they are in a regulatory regime with the Home Office. So it means they've got to meet certain obligations, certain compliance points to be able to keep their licence in the way that the Home Office expect them to keep it. And if there are any breaches, they can have their licence withdrawn, and then any sponsored workers have their visas curtailed. So UK employers have to get a licence. Once they have the licence and they're in that regulatory regime, they then have to decide whether they can sponsor someone for work in the UK, and they have to consider what the salary is and what the job is and who the person is and whether they are in fact a good fit for that role or not. So you can't just say, my friend needs a job, I'm going to hire them in this job because we've got a vacancy. If that friend actually doesn't have the skill required for that role, you can't sponsor them for that role. So it's very difficult, it's less flexible. And then just in terms of costs, if, say, you are a medium or large business and you want to sponsor someone for employment in the UK for a 5-year visa, just in terms of Home Office costs alone, you're looking at just under £10,000. So there's a significant, everyone's shaking their heads, yeah, there's a significant cost in relation to sponsoring someone for work in the UK. So it's unenticing in terms of its commerciality. But where does this leave UK industries, and where does this leave the hospitality industry? Well, the Home Office's response to the loss of EU workers was to revise our work sponsorship system. So they took the skill level, and previously it was RQF level 6, which is degree level and above. And they said, okay, we'll reduce that. We'll reduce that to school leaver level and above. So it's now RQF level 3. And in terms of minimum salary requirements, they said, previously it was £30,000 per annum as a minimum. They reduced it to £25,600 per annum. But although these changes were welcomed by some sectors, they did little to alleviate staffing pressures in the hospitality sector, where a large portion of jobs are considered to be low skilled. So that means they're not going to meet the RQF level 3, so the school leaver level requirement. And additionally, salaries tend to be lower than the £25,600. So sponsorship isn't always going to be a good alternative, or even a possible alternative. So what do we have instead? So the government said it will not open a category for lower skilled work. Remember, we have a hostile immigration environment, so they've just said we're not going to do it. So there's no magic wand, I'm sorry, in terms of solutions. So for now, hotels need to continue to hire from the UK resident labour market. So that means British nationals, Irish nationals, or anyone who's already in the UK with a permanent ability to be here. If you're looking at the migrant population, then you're looking at people who have visas in their own right, but give them the flexibility to do whatever the purpose is that they came here for, but also to work freely for any employer. So you might see people coming on the graduate visa. The graduate visa, it's a new visa route, and it allows migrants who have held a visa to study in the UK at degree level. Once they've finished their degree, they can apply for a 2-year visa. And on this 2-year visa, they can live and work freely in the UK, so without the need for sponsorship. So they can try lots of different industries, lots of different employers, and see if there's one that fits them, and then hopefully get themselves to a level where they can do a role that could be sponsored for employment under the sponsorship scheme. Anyone in the UK as a dependent, so often we find that you have someone who comes to the UK, they're the main applicant on their visa, so perhaps they've got a work permit to come to the UK, but they bring their wife with them, or they bring their husband with them, they bring their partner with them. The husband, wife, partner as a dependent is able to work freely for any employer in the UK, so that still represents a large portion of the migrant population. Student visas, anyone on a student visa may be able to work. Be careful with students, because they don't always have an opportunity to work as part of their visa conditions, but they will all tell you that they do. So you've got to check the visa. The visa will tell you if there's no work permitted or if there is work permitted. Often students have a time limit as to how long they can work in the UK. So some can do 20 hours per week, some can do 10 hours a week. Some might say work placement, and work placement means that they can't work for you unless it's an assessed part of their course. So you've got to be a little bit careful with students, but they can work freely without the need for sponsorship. There are other visa routes as well, including some new categories that we've had in the UK, including the Ukraine family scheme. So this is for Ukrainians who've been displaced from their homes in Ukraine as a result of the war. They're able to come to the UK to join family members in the UK, and they are being given visas which will allow them to work. So the 3-year visas, and they can work for any employer. And it's the same with the Homes for Ukraine scheme. They're having the same conditions. So they're able to establish their lives in the UK. But that's the short term. What can we do in the long term? So in the long term, perhaps an option is to lobby the government for category-specific carve-out in the UK immigration system. And we've seen success for some other industry sectors. So for instance, the agricultural sector and the fashion sector have all been able to carve out specific categories to enable them to continue to resource their businesses in the UK. So how could this work for hotels? One avenue could be to ask for roles where there is a deficit of available staff in the UK to be added to the UK shortage occupation list. So the shortage occupation list really exists for skilled roles that are in short supply in the UK. But there's no reason why we couldn't say to the Home Office, to the government, actually, this sector is really suffering. We don't have enough people to do X, Y, and Z roles. Can you introduce a lower skilled category to combat the current labour shortage? If this would occur, then probably sponsorship would still be necessary. So you'd be still looking at costs in relation to hiring, sometimes temporary workers. So it may not be the best solution. Another alternative is to lobby for the creation of a separate visa route for low-skilled temporary and seasonal workers. And this might enable you to employ staff at peak periods, giving you flexibility to hire workers as and when they are needed. So that's it. It's not great news, but it's not awful news.
Let me introduce John. John Baines is one of our senior data specialists in our innovation group. He's been assisting clients for many years in relation to both data security and also how to maximise value on data, and is about to give us some insights on his view of how people trip up in this sector and also how you might want to benefit. So, John.
Thanks, Andrew. Crikey. I've heard the words data and tech and innovation so many times in the last hour and a half, or probably less. My notes have been rewritten. I had lots of things to say. There's probably a lack of structure now. I've got various things to address. One of which is, James, I think you were probably speaking to the wrong advisors about GDPR, because it's about something slightly different than a lot of people think. And the reason I mention that is, and it was something that came out in the panel session. I've got some other stuff to say, but what actually really stood out for me was the comment about the fact that data's not really being used in the sector. And I guess I might have suspected that, but it sounded perhaps worse than I thought. That there was less use of valuable data than I thought. And there's a phrase that you've probably heard before, but we repeat it in our practice here all the time about data being a critical asset. It's so very true. And by that I mean personal data about each of us, but also just business data about your systems, your usage, your occupancy. What I will say though, critical asset, that means it's got value, but it does mean it's got risk, and it does mean there is a bit of work to be done to maximise it. And I suspect what I was hearing earlier was that in fact, it's almost still being treated as almost an offshoot of the business, that it's almost like, what's all this junk that we could do something with, but we can't. And I think there's a real risk in still thinking about it like that in fact, it's valuable, and therefore you have to put in the work to make it work. And that work might be getting appropriate advice. It might be around making sure that you've got good security in place. But I think it can't just be seen as an offshoot. I think it's absolutely crucial going forwards. So I think there was sort of two things that I was really going to talk about today. One was around innovative tech, and one was around data breaches. I may not even get the chance to get to the data breaches stuff, but in fact, I think the message that I've got around the first theme is largely dealt with. It kind of seems to me that during the pandemic, everything stopped. But when I look around at sort of innovation in technology, that seemed to just carry on apace. And you're all the experts in the sector, but some of the things that I know that are being explored and introduced in the sector, I hear about hotel robots. I'm not quite sure what they do and what they are, but I know there's other stuff, just connected devices in rooms, voice assistants, cashless payments, remote check-in. All of this, of course, is tech. All of this involves the use of data. And if I toe the party line, and the party line, I guess, is really me talking as a Mishcon person. It's also me representing the data protection community. I say that data protection is not a barrier to innovation. And that is true, but there is also a little bit of reality in place. And this takes me back to what I was saying earlier about there is risk involved. And I'll just tell a little story. It's not from the hotels sector, but it is from, let's just say, the physical entertainment sector. I have a client that introduced live facial recognition technology to their intention was not so much for customer experience, it was actually to kind of stop the wrong people coming in with all the best motives. They spent a lot of money purchasing this, procuring it, purchasing, implementing. They, before they came to us, they were advised, now, this is a risky area, data's risky, so you should refer yourself to the Information Commissioner. For those of you who don't know, that's the regulator for data protection. Just so you get a seal of approval. And so they did that, and the Information Commissioner not only didn't give them a seal of approval, but said, you need to stop what you're doing, you can't do this, and we're going to consider you for enforcement action. And so that's the two sides. The two sides I've got is data protection is not a barrier to innovation, but the other side is, well, sometimes it can be. And that's a tricky path to navigate. And that's why I come back to saying this. I can't pretend it's always straightforward. And I can't pretend we're back at the days when junk data is not quite the correct way of talking about all that customer data, but I'm going to use it. We've gone from the days when there was just this amorphous lot, what can we do with it, to this is valuable, but because it's valuable, we need to consider the risks, we need to do things right. The lesson, by the way, for our clients was, whatever you do, you shouldn't have referred yourself to the Information Commissioner. You didn't have a legal obligation to do so. Now you've done so, you're in a right pickle. And we're currently trying to pull them out of that pickle. And then if I move on to data breaches very quickly, it's rather the same picture. So there is an inherent risk in being open about a data breach. And I say that not in the sense of suggesting you should do something unprofessional, but if your systems are compromised, if there is a compromise of data, again, remember, valuable and risky. So if there's a breach, it's absolutely crucial, I think, to take stock at the time, don't overreact, consider whether you have an obligation to notify a regulator, the Information Commissioner. Consider even more, do you have an obligation to notify data subjects? And I'll tell another story about a client in again, completely different sector. They had a compromise, they were open, they were transparent, they told all of the data subjects whose data had been compromised. It was anodyne data. It was just names, basically, nothing else. 2 years later, they are still receiving aggressive lawyers' letters threatening legal claims. And they didn't need to make that notification. And I think that's just really my takeaway, that this is, I'm very loath to say you should always come to lawyers and get lawyers to advise you, because that's what you'd expect me to say, and I honestly don't always believe that. But if we keep going back to valuable and risky, then we can't just pretend that it's easy. But I think it is the future. Quite clearly, the number of times we heard data, the number of times we heard tech in the panel session, it is the future. But just have a think about it before you do something risky.
John? Yeah, no, please. So just at this juncture, I was going to open up the floor, really, to ask any questions, either of the panellists or indeed of the Mishcon people here, or indeed of each other. If there are questions, one of the benefits of coming to an event like this is we've got people here from the investment community, from the operator community, and from the owner community, and this will be an opportunity to network and ask questions and share ideas and knowledge as we will do over drinks later. But if there are questions you'd like to raise, just to get the response from the floor, feel free to ask. So firstly, of John or immigration, any issues or questions at this stage? If not, we can close and move over to the drinks. Any questions? Obviously done a good job. So thank you, John. So I think my takeaway is just very briefly from this, and again, this comes back to my own personal experience of working in this sector and listening about this, is anyone that knows me knows that my favourite phrase is follow the money. And I think one of the comments we heard today about actually the top line growth can often mask the underlying profitability of a business, and you really, really do need to keep a very close eye on the underlying profitability. And we're hearing some amazing things that people are doing to try to create the edge and to try and make clients sticky, because that's ultimately you want brand loyalty, you want people coming back. And I think also from the investment community, it may not be operating levels now where some of this stuff is being done at the moment, but any new investor coming into this sector, ESG is absolutely on their must-have list, and they want to understand exactly what the operator's view is or the owner's view is before they co-invest in those projects. So I think that is absolutely a positive future-looking benefit of the market shift. There's not one investor conference where ESG is not very high on the agenda. So again, come back to tech. I mean, I personally have lived in that world for a number of years. Data is money. And the ability to use it and monetize it in a way that's effective, that creates the connection to the clients and makes them want to come back because they know you better and they feel at home, is absolutely the way in which you create the repeat business. Certainly we're seeing a huge amount of industries built up deliberately to try and find ways to create that connection. The high end will always have the ratio of people to guest and who will know intimately what that person's requirements are, but there is a need to do it at all levels to create why would I go back to a particular chain brand versus another one? The answer is because actually they know that I feel more at home there, that they know exactly what my needs are, et cetera, et cetera. So with that, I'm going to stop talking and welcome you to some more drinks, and we'll bring some cocktails in a little bit later. But thank you again for coming. Let's continue the conversation over some drinks, and thank you again. Much appreciated.